Verra-Tirado. I'm the Bureau Chief from the Department of Education. I oversee the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services. So that covers special education from preschool through age 22, as well as student services. Hello, you want to come up here? Right. Wonderful. As well as student services, which includes school social work, school psychologists, school nurses, etc. So the whole range. And then another piece that falls under our bureau is the Department of Juvenile Justice, the educational portion. We are not responsible for the actual judicial proceedings and all of those things, but we're responsible to make sure the students are provided an education while in the DJJ system. Welcome. I'd like to introduce two of our team members from our bureau, April Katine, and she is handing out question and comment cards. And we found that's been very useful for folks who have questions. When we get to the end, what we'll do is she'll be collecting them all along, and then at the end, I'll reserve a few minutes and try to get to those questions that are general, and then get to people's specific questions. But then that way, if somehow time runs out, we've got your contact information, and we can make sure we follow up with you individually when we get back. Like, as I say, to the ranch, which is Tallahassee, we can reach back out and work with you. Amy Molini is our Parent Services Liaison. And I forgot to say, April Katine, she's a program director who oversees parent services, but also communication, RB's website. We have a website online that has lots of resources, and all kinds of other things, our publications, etc. April, do you mind closing the back door? Okay. So, what we're going to, typically what I do at Family Cafe is I do kind of a state of the state. And I know something that's been on people's minds a lot of questions I've gotten over the last couple days has been related to the new graduation options for students with disabilities. So I'm going to kind of start us off with that once we get going. But I do want you to be thinking of big, broad questions that you think will be good to increase everybody's awareness. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. As well, and then of course we always take time at the end and even between sessions to meet with families if you have a specific concern about your son or daughter. So that's another part of our outreach here. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Well, let me let me tell you a little bit about myself just to put it in context. And some of you got to see a family come in, and Dakota was the young man who has a developmental disability. He graduated just this year, and he's very excited. He's going to be participating now in his 18 to 22-year-old program. And I had the pleasure of working with him since he was 3 years old. When back in my history, when I was a school-based administrator, he was a little guy in our programs at school. And so it's giving me goosebumps. But so I'm a real person who actually has worked. I've been a classroom teacher, both basic ed and special education, a school-based administrator, and then I worked at the school district as a local director for 8 years in a large district in Florida. As a parent, my husband and I have 4 children. They're all adults now, but 2 of them have IEPs going through school, and so I've worn both hats. And we have other relatives, a nephew with autism, and like most of us do. Many of us in here, I think, wear multiple hats. But I think that's important because I think it helps bring a perspective to the work that we're doing, and it makes it real. And I always like people to know that because I know for myself, if I'm at a federal meeting or back when I was at the school level, if I met somebody from the state, I just kind of wondered, what in the world, do they even know anything at all? Have they ever even been in a school? So I just want to let you know I actually have done that. So, all right, you're with me, right? All right. So those of you who've heard me speak before, you know a big vision and very important priority in Florida is for us to really be serious about thinking of our system and designing our system from preschool to post-school so that every single thing that a school district is working on in terms of programs, services, that continuum are all aligned so that it's not, here's the preschool and then we pass you there, and then we pass you off to kindergarten, and then something happens, and then you go to middle school and high school, and the 2 groups where the 5 different groups never talk, and it's just that is not the way it should be. So we talk about that as being vertical alignment. And I can tell you more and more school districts and schools are having literally conversations for transition planning, and not just transition planning from preschool to the traditional has been from preschool to kindergarten and then post-school after you leave. But there's transition all along the way, right? So like it's a big deal going up from 5th grade to 6th grade. So we've really been encouraging districts to be meeting as vertical teams from those elementary programs, middle school, high school, and plan with the end in mind. If our goal is for every student to graduate college, career, and life ready, then what does that look like in preschool? What should we be doing in preschool? What should we be doing in kindergarten, 1st grade, etc.? So that we don't get to the end and have an adolescent, young man or young woman who we realize we haven't adequately prepared. They're not independent enough. They don't have the academic skills in order to pursue their goals. And we want to make sure that this is equitable all across the state. We want to make sure that no matter what your zip code is, you have that same quality service for your son or daughter. That's very, very important. And that's one of the things that's my responsibility as Bureau Chief, is to look at the data across the state, celebrate data that we're improving statewide, but then also dig down deeper. So are there districts that are exceeding and excelling? Great. What about the schools in that district? Are some of the schools in that district needing more support while some are doing really, really well? And then what about districts? Are some districts struggling and needing more support? And the way we have prioritized going on site to districts that need more support. And we meet with them and we review data with them and we help them to look at their plan so that they can improve. Let's get back to IDEA 2004, because this is what supports this idea from preschool to post-school. It's the whole point of IDEA, which we know is the Individuals with Disability Education Act, was to ensure that persons with disabilities in the United States of America would have educational results that would lead to equality of opportunity for every person with disability, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. And again, I look at this like almost every day, because I have to remember that's what it's all about. And that's where that preschool to post-school, so that at the end, have we given our students the skills that they need so they can attain these. And this is just really the American dream. And really what we're talking about is the opportunity to participate in the American dream, right? And so that's really, really important that we constantly go back to that when we're making decisions all along the way. So in Florida, again, I said we're working to move to greater attainment and that we want it to be equitable across the state. So zip code should determine whether or not you're likely to graduate prepared or not. So we have real, very simple focus. We want to increase the number of students graduating college and career and life ready. You heard our chancellor, if you were here last night, Chancellor Lyons, who's over our K-12 system, talk about that. And how we would like to do that is to focus on improving our graduation rate, decreasing our dropout rate. Far too many of our students continue to drop out. And then looking even beyond graduation, what's happening with our students after they've exited our school system? Are they found in continued education? Are they found employed? Are they found in meaningful choices? And again, a theme that I constantly think about is that every student should have the ability to have choices and that their voice be heard. And so there's a wide range of possibilities for post-school life. A goal would be competitive employment for all who choose to work. But I also know that there are some folks who are in a situation where they spend a lot of time doing really wonderful volunteer work. And that's a choice for them. But the point is it should be a choice. And so that's what we're really emphasizing. So this comes from OSEP, which is the federal office of special education. And these are big ideas that they shared back in 2012, but these are really the big ideas that we're continuing to kind of use as our North Star. So in order to do this and really change outcomes for students with disabilities, adults with disabilities, United States, these are the things that we need to be focused on. We need to make sure that we've got alignment, and that's what I talked about, is that K-12, that preschool, and again, we partner very closely with Early Steps, so really from birth to post-school. This is key. Developing policies that will push all teachers to be prepared to train to work with students with disabilities. and their parents. I added parents because I think that that's a real area that we need to focus on. And I'll be honest with you, as a teacher myself, I know there was very little real training on working with families, more than just encouraging folks to bring in cupcakes for the class party. That's the easy level of parent involvement, right? Or parents who come in and volunteer and help. But I think the harder part is what happens when, as folks who all around the table care about this child and all are invested in this child, and we don't all necessarily have the same opinions. And how do we work through that? And how do we not get into a situation where it becomes conflict? And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing with that. But I would suggest to you, I would encourage you to think about that is actually not unusual. How many times in our own families do we not all agree about how we ought to raise our children or what we ought to do with our children? Does that ever happen in your families? Thanksgiving, people give opinions on maybe just my family. So, all my family cares about, we all care about each other's children, but we all have different opinions, right? And so it's a matter of, instead of this becoming this conflict and right and wrong, it's how do we build consensus and respect each other and think about the different perspectives and build that. But I think that's an area in pre-service that probably doesn't get a lot of attention, so teachers come out not really knowing how can I engage families to that degree. One of the things that I'm proud of Florida that we did in terms of responding to this kind of a game changer is in 1108, Senate Bill 1108. As you know, at this point now, every single teacher in Florida, general ed, the PE teacher, the art teacher, the science teacher, every teacher, every educator who has a certificate has to have at least 20 in-service hours or 1 college credit in teaching students with disabilities. So that is now a requirement for them in terms of their renewal of their certificate. And so that's the beginning of really saying that every teacher is a teacher of students with disabilities. It's not just special education.
That's administrators too.
Yes, and it's administrators too. Good point. Thank you, Melody. I think that's a push in the right direction. Another thing, very important, you hear a lot about RTI and multi-tier systems of support, MTSS, but fundamentally the big idea, if we can walk away with this, would be that we create a general education environment that is differentiated and allows for assistive technology and universal design for learning, which is another kind of framework that helps us to plan so that all learners can be successful. And the thought behind that, and we have lots of research to support that, is that when you create that environment, not only are students with disabilities successful, but every student is successful, right? And so really it's looking at our work, and then not just thinking of, well, we do this and it fits in a box, and if you don't match that box, then you have to go someplace else where you get some kind of service. But no, let's recreate general education so that it's responsive, because other students are not doing well in general education. Our English language learners, some of our students who are coming from backgrounds that are highly complicated due to high rates of poverty and those kinds of things. And so it's really being responsive, planning for the students that we have, not the students that we want, right? Or we wish, in utopia or whatever, Lake Wobegon, is that, making sure that we continue to include all students in assessment, and that's very important. We have increased in Florida opportunities to exclude students through our extraordinary exemption process, and that was through 1108. But of course what we want to do is we want to make sure that that is only for critical types of situations, because we pushed really hard in the special education advocacy world to make sure every student was included in assessment, because there was, not too long ago, just a few years ago, they were not included necessarily, and their scores were not included in the school grades in Florida. So you could have an A, but none of the kids with disabilities in your school, your scores were not included up until, I think it's been 4 or 5 years now. So this is an important thing. So when you hear, and I know right now, testing, there's a lot of different, get rid of it, or keep it, or change it, but I think the big idea that I would like us to all keep in mind is accountability, when done right, helps to make sure that every single student is accounted for and paid attention to. And I can tell you, as a teacher, I can remember back before accountability, and before, when I was a special education teacher, my principal was a great principal. But I mean, really, the main thing was just that I kept the parents happy, the kids happy. Nobody was running up into the front office, and he just trusted that I was doing what I should do. And I think I was. I don't know. I believe I was a good teacher. But when it changed and students with disabilities were included in school grades, principals now are in special education classrooms or in the general education classroom where special education students are, asking the same kinds of questions they would have been asking for all other kids. Does that make sense? So it really shifted the level of accountability. How many of you saw that shift? Okay, so although there's been some challenges that have come with it, I really think overall it's been much better. Same thing with the other subgroups. When we started to look at data by race and ethnicity, and we saw there was huge gaps for our Black students, for our Hispanic students, etc. It really put attention on where we needed to make some huge improvements in our system. And then, of course, this is the key, is making sure that we've got really solid transition planning that's happening prior to Johnny's last day in the school system. And for many kids, that'll be 22. So that it's not just this big surprise, or we're on a list waiting for something. And in the meantime, Johnny, who's been engaged and active and busy, and now he's a 22-year-old at home on the couch, waiting. And so that should never happen. And it happens too often right now. We've got wonderful, capable students in our community right now who are waiting for opportunities to get back engaged into, when I say community, out there, but they're at home waiting to get back engaged in the community to the degree to which they were when they were in the K-12 system. So we don't want any gaps. So one of the things that the data is really finding, guys, I think we've still got some seats up in here. And I can move all my off of this chair, make room. No, we kind of camped out here. So this research comes from the National Center on Educational Outcomes, and they did a really extensive study on the current graduation requirements for students with disabilities, and really the emphasis was, how do we make sure that the diplomas are meaningful? Okay, and that's what's going to be key as I talk to you about the change in diploma options in Florida. Because no matter what we call the diploma, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that it's meaningful, meaning that the students have left with the skills that they need to have their voice heard and for choices that are meaningful for them. So here's, just in a nutshell, you can read this report. I encourage you to download it. It's really, really good stuff, and a lot of the research behind this help frame the decision making around diplomas in Florida. But here are the overall recommendations from that study. To set high college and career expectations and clear goals for all students with disabilities. Now remember, because a lot of times when you hear college and career, it's like right away everybody's thinking, not every child's going to go to college. And that may be true, but we want every child to leave with choices. So that it's not that we predetermined when you were in first grade that you were not going to go to college. Because then what happens? We set you on a path of curriculum that will certainly make sure that you're not ready to go to college because of the expectations that were lowered. So the point of all of this is to ensure that kids are leaving with those choices for college. And we also know now that when we think about college, that's expanding. So that there are programs, meaningful programs for young adults with intellectual disabilities at the college level. So that they are getting increased skills, and it's certainly modified to the actual college credit courses that typical students would be taking. But it is meaningful, and we're seeing really good outcomes in some of our programs around the state, that our students who participate in that are not only increasing their academic skills, but that kinds of academic skills that translate really well into employment, meaningful employment, and we're seeing high employment rates, as well as just satisfaction in life. You know, they're spending time with other peers who are their age, non-disabled and students with disabilities. And so we're really looking at that. So we have to think beyond just our notion of what do we think of today of college and career? And then think about it being unlimited. Just think way beyond what we know today. And what does career mean? We think, oh, this is career. Well, career can look a lot of different ways. Supported employment can allow persons with more complex disabilities to have meaningful employment in the community. So these are some ideas that are not brand new, but they're actually now coming into fruition, and we're getting more and more employers on board and post-secondary institutions in terms of embracing this and seeing this as a moral imperative. And that's what we want. We want people's hearts. The law doesn't hurt. So it's good when we have a law that helps us, but we also want people's hearts. So some of the recommendations were also to limit the diploma options, because believe it or not, what the research is showing is the more options the state has, the lower graduation rate and the higher dropout rate. And that was true for Florida prior to our legislative changes last year. But by limiting the number of diploma options, you should, as a state, have multiple equally rigorous paths for students with disabilities. So you don't have like a ton of diplomas. You have one diploma, but multiple ways to get to that same diploma. And that's where we are now in Florida. And this is the other piece, is to continue to research the impact of the requirements for students and the impact on post-school outcomes. So let's go into what happened last summer with Senate Bill 850. The big thing that people hear is, and this is, I had several parents come to me, so special diploma's gone. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it did. Senate Bill 850 repealed the special diploma. So as of July 1st, 2015, which is now just a couple weeks away, the special diploma in Florida will no longer be it will not exist, and only if the few students in Florida who are continuing to pursue that may continue to work on the special diploma, but we also want to make sure that they have the option to work on a regular diploma, a standard diploma, the Florida standard diploma. So that's something also, if you are a parent whose child is still participating in a special diploma, and typically those would be this year's, well, because officially like the school year is over, so this next year's group of juniors and seniors, then make sure you get information from one of us so that you know what your options are in terms of how do they get on that standard diploma track. So it repealed the special diploma, but I'm going to tell you what it replaced it with, okay, some other options. Now, one thing I want to say right here is with this, it's a reminder of historically, the majority of students with disabilities have been participating in the same courses in high school as all other students. Okay, that's really, really important. And 60%, nearly 60% as of 13-14 graduation data graduated with those same courses and in the same Algebra 1, biology, doing the same thing that their peers did. And we do not expect those numbers to go down. We expect those to continue to increase. So here I'm going to talk about, we had a rule that was developed in response to this, and the rule described 2 high school graduation options that are now available only to students with disabilities, but they lead to the standard diploma. So in essence, what you can think about is there's the standard diploma that every student participates in. Most students with disabilities will continue to participate in the same way as all other students. They're in the same courses, their courses are not modified, but they do have accommodations for their IEP. Does that make sense? And then a small percent of students may participate in the courses that we call our access courses, okay? So access courses are for students with significant cognitive disabilities, okay? So that's less than 10% of our population of students with disabilities have significant cognitive disabilities. So we would expect around 90% of our students will continue to participate in those traditional courses that everyone else participates in. And about 10% of our students with disabilities participate in access courses. What is an access course? Well, an access course, basically, the quick way to define it is, and by the way, this is required. There's a spot right up here too if you would like to sit, Pamela, right up front. I also want to make sure everybody knows that this is not just something in Florida. The federal government under IDEA requires that every student with a disability participate in the same standards as all other students. That's actually a discrimination issue to have students with disabilities participating in other standards because it's about access. Everybody should have access to the same set of standards. So what the federal government has allowed for is that a small percent, and you'll often hear it described as the 1%, the 1%. That means 1% of the total population of individuals is thought to have a significant cognitive disability, okay? When you just look at students with disabilities, it's 10%, around 10%. So 1% can participate in courses where the standards are aligned to the state standards, but they're modified. And those modified standards, which we call access points in Florida, they basically take, like, let's say that 4th grade math standard, and they break it down and continue to break that standard down. The teachers, well, we have some examples that we give teachers, but again, because we know it has to be individualized, they can break it down to the level that they need to for that individual student through the IEP process. And then that group of students would take the Florida alternate assessment. Because that's the other thing I want to remind people. It's the course that you're in, and we have courses all the way from kindergarten up. It's the course that you're in that tells you which assessment you should be taking. Because the course, it wouldn't make sense to take an access course and then take the FCAT or the FSA, our new, so, and nor would it make sense to take the traditional course and then take it has to align. But believe it or not, that still comes up, that people, it's like, yeah, no, it needs to be aligned, it needs to be aligned. Standard diploma via access courses. Now that we've I made sure we have a common understanding of these access courses. Remember, access courses are for a small percentage of our population. Our students who participate in access courses in high school will earn the same standard diploma as any other student. Okay, that's huge. Up till this point, those access courses led to a special diploma. So what the legislature did is said, no, those courses are aligned to the same standards that every other student participates in. They take a state assessment, a required state assessment, and we ought to be following the same pathway. So, but with different, in other words, the same overall, it's like parallel, but it allows for students to participate. And so as an example, our regular high school diploma, our standard high school diploma for all kids is 24 credits right now. Okay, and it includes, as an example, Algebra 1. And we have an Access Algebra 1 course for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Now, a lot of times parents, especially when you hear that at the elementary level, it's like, I've had parents come up to me. Well, first of all, there's 2 schools of camps. Some who want higher and higher expectations, and then others who will come up and say, my kid can't do algebra, are you crazy, lady? But when I remind them that the point is we want to get all of our kids, we don't want to hold kids back because of what our preconceived notions are. And we want to do our very best to provide them the support and the opportunity through access points to progress. And the way the access points are designed is if you continue to show proficiency on those access points, it could ultimately lead up to that grade level standard. And that actually happened this year. It's been so incredible. I've had districts call and say, and the other thing that's important I want y'all to know is access points are setting neutral. In other words, they do not have to take place in a separate classroom. That's right. They can take place in a general education classroom. And we are encouraging that more and more. That's an IEP team decision. But we're doing more training for general education teachers and special education teachers as to how do I do that? What does that look like? I'm a teacher of 4th grade, and now I've got a student on access courses And I'll just pick, I have a young man or woman, a young lady on access courses, perhaps with Down syndrome, who's in my 4th grade regular traditional math class. The access course, and actually on the teacher's schedule, it would show the regular math class and then the access course and whoever's assigned to that. And what the good thing about the access points, because it takes that 4th grade standard and it breaks it down, it's easier for that general education teacher to see how she or he can differentiate right down to that child's level. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we really tried to make it to where the courses themselves shouldn't be a barrier. Now, if the student needs something different, then that's an IP team decision. And so I don't want, and again, I have 2 schools of thought as parents. I've got some who really, really want full inclusion and that are excited about things when I talk about that, and then others who I don't know, I'm not sure if that's right for my child. My job is to be respectful and make sure I'm listening to everybody's voice and making sure that, again, it goes back to choices. But whatever the choice is, it better be, in my opinion, the same high quality. So access courses are setting neutral, so that's important to know. I know what I was saying about the scaffolding up. We've had some folks who called this year to say, I have a kiddo in my class who's on access courses, but I'm modifying less and less. And it looks like they're actually doing the standards. What do I do? Well, first let's celebrate. Right? That's you didn't do anything wrong. The teacher's because everybody wants to follow rules. What do I? I'm well, first celebrate, and then let's do some assessment. And it turns out that in this one particular case I'm thinking of, that the student just had a special, it was math, had a special strength in math, and was actually able to do the curriculum in math. And so these are the things we want to see more and more of. But the basic ed teacher at first is what do I do? The child's actually mastering this thing, but those are good problems to have, right? So when you're out there, guys, support those teachers when they have those moments, because it's just new to them, and they just don't know that, it's no, you didn't do anything wrong, you did everything right. And that's what we would have hoped that would happen. And then here's another option, and this is available, so access is only available to students with significant cognitive disabilities. That's very important. So that's it. And so, for example, a student with a specific learning disability is not eligible to take access courses, because by definition, when we find you eligible as having a specific learning disability, part of the criteria is that you do not have a cognitive disability. Okay? So we're really careful about this. The majority of the students who are eligible and participate in access courses tend to have intellectual disabilities, so their eligibility is IND. About half of our students with autism spectrum disorder are participating in the access courses, and then we have other students who have dual diagnosis, dual eligibilities, who are participating in access courses. Now, this option here is available to any student with a disability, and this is where they can take a career technical course that has related content for either access for, well, actually, this example here is just talking about students with access courses, but they can replace 4 access courses with career courses, but they're very specific courses that they have to replace them with. Now, this is the one, let's see. Okay, we're continuing to talk about that access courses. Our students must also take the alternate assessment in reading, math, and science. They must be proficient, or the IEP team must meet and determine whether or not they're requesting a waiver of the results of the Flora alternate assessment. This process has always been in place for students who have taken the FCAT or the new FSA. That's always been in place. We've never used it or needed it for the FAW because they were not working towards a standard diploma. And because that's a requirement of the standard diploma, is that you're proficient on your graduation assessment, your assessment's graduation, required for graduation. This is really important. The law did not change who can take access courses, and it didn't change the alternate assessment. It didn't change the courses. So there's urban myths out there that, the kids are now going to be in Algebra 1 access. The law didn't do that. That already existed. The difference is that course path would have led to a special diploma. Okay? All the law did is say that course pathway is going to lead to the same standard diploma that any other kid gets. Okay, does that make sense? Another important thing is that parents must give consent to this. Because even though it's a standard diploma now, what we know is access courses clearly are modified standards. That's the truth. We can say Algebra 1 access, but we know it's not the same rigor of standards that the traditional Algebra 1 course offers. So parents need to be informed that this is not the same course, this is a modified course, and they must give consent for taking those courses and taking the class. Does that make sense? Okay, and that's really important. And then this is the other one that's available to any student with a disability. You have to meet the same 24 course requirement. You also have to earn at least 1/2 credit in an employment-based course with achievement of employment transition plan, and you also have the opportunity to substitute 4 of your courses with a career technical education course. Okay, but you can't substitute algebra, geometry, biology, or U.S. history because those are actually required in state statute to graduate the Florida Standard Diploma.
So how do you get through those courses?
How do you? What's the question?
How do you get through them since they're so difficult when the other classes have access?
Okay, so this would be for, you're right, this would be for students primarily who do not have significant cognitive disabilities. Students with more mild
But
disabilities.
if they're taking access classes for other classes, do they usually take those too?
These are for students who are not taking access courses. And usually you're taking either all access or not access. However, I do want to say it's an IEP team decision. There are a few unique cases that I've heard of. We still in the field know probably this much about disabilities. Honestly, we're still learning every day, right? So there may be some students for whom they take a variety, a mixed option of courses, and that would be an IEP team decision. So beginning this year, 14-15, every single student in 9th grader in Florida was either enrolled, so 9th grade and actually beyond, so 9, 8, 7, 6, etc., was either enrolled in access point courses or traditional standards courses. That's it. And remember what I said, that means about 90% of our kids with disabilities were enrolled in traditional courses, and around 10% of our students with disabilities were enrolled in the access courses. Both lead to the Florida Standard Diploma, okay? And so we are excited, and we've heard good things. I met with a family not too long ago who was really nervous about this because she had been under the impression that in high school her daughter would just go into kind of special diploma and just kind of go into more of the work. And the team actually recommended her for the traditional 9th grade algebra course. And this, and if the mom's here, tell your story. And I said, well, how's she doing? She said, well, she's struggling. Sometimes it's getting D's and sometimes getting C's, and she has to study a lot. I said, well, to pass the course, you just need a D. And I'm not suggesting a D is, like, woo! But if it's a D in a traditional course, instead of an A in an access course, y'all with me? I'm like, celebrate that with her. Because she, get goosebumps. She is in the game. And that's going to help her to be more successful and more independent. And that's the other thing to encourage parents is, it is kind of risky sometimes to take the traditional courses and to see maybe our kids may not have the 4.0 in the harder courses. Please, that's okay, guys. That's okay. Have you ever taken a hard course or test that you worked really, really hard in and you learned a lot, but didn't maybe get the A, but you still felt good, like, I'm just glad I did that. So I really want us, because right now the culture in society is every kid has to get straight A's or something's wrong. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by allowing us all to realize that there are going to be some things I may get A's in and some things I may not. But the point is that I worked really, really hard, and did I learn? That's the other thing. Just because I didn't get the best grade doesn't mean I didn't learn something. It just means that maybe I didn't perform it at the highest level, but I did learn. And so, especially as we're raising standards, a lot of times what I hear, and I do meet with parents and I kind of talk them down, is, you know, wouldn't you rather your child have more rigorous courses that maybe would be a lower grade point average? And the same thing is for non-disabled kids or gifted kids who will say, oh, I'm eligible to be in the International Baccalaureate program, but I'm afraid if I take those courses, I won't have my 4.555689 GPA, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, no, let that go, because if that's more rigorous for you, go for it. And so I think that's something I always, whenever I get a chance, I encourage us all as society to let go of this, like, this notion that a perfect grade means we actually learn the most. Yes.
Develop a bumper sticker now in schools that recognize, like my daughter, for her to make it up halfway decent grade. And I do a lot of one-on-one
Yeah.
tutoring. I know a lot of people
Yes.
can afford that. For her to be successful, like in biology
Yes.
this year, I mean, we're celebrating D's and C's.
Right.
But I would like, it would be nice if we had a school that came alongside and said,
That's a great idea, bumper stickers. My child's doing their best and making success, period, no grade. As opposed to,
a C's an A to me.
Amen. Amen, exactly. And continue to celebrate, but you know, that's a really good point. That's a really good
Because
point.
those kids do not get recognized.
No, you're right.
They do the valedictorian, or they
Yeah.
do the cheerleader,
Yeah.
She came home with a volunteer certificate, telling me I was so proud that she got someone handed her. a-
Awesome.
for her
No, but that's a good point, because as a mama, I dealt with that too. I remember my kids' best was never A work. Never A work. Their best was never A work. And I remember one time, I let him do a project by himself, because you're supposed to let them do their projects by themselves, right? Everybody now, you guys get the rest of the story. He came home crushed. Mom, mine didn't look like anybody else. He had been so, he's 25 now, still makes me cry. He was so darn proud of it, and he learned a lot. And I'm like, okay, never again. Next time, well, we'll do the project together. Anyhow, all right, you guys are a fun group. You get me. Here's the good news too: is under the federal and state statute, there previously, well, there still is. There's no requirement that schools continue to offer services to students who graduate with a standard diploma. So the legislature was very careful and concerned, because what they knew is that there are some students who, under access courses, need to stay after they graduate. Let's say you take your 24 credit hours, and that has you in 18 or 19 years old, but you really need those services to age 22 in the school system. So they allowed for IEP teams and families to make the recommendation decision to defer the receipt of the standard diploma. So what does that mean? What that means is, and again, it's primarily for students who have significant needs for that 18 to 22-year-old age range, to make sure that they have the skills for good transition. So in most, now this part is a district decision, but in most districts that I have talked to, their plan is that every student who falls under this, meets the 24 credit, would walk with their class. But again, talk to your local superintendents, make sure that because that's a local decision, but they would walk with their class, and then come back and finish and continue to work. And at any time, they would get their actual hard copy diploma upon request. So in other words, even if you say, your child says, at that time, I'm going to stay for 4 years. But then after a year says, I think I'm now 20, and I want to try some other things. I don't want to work with the school system anymore. Then they need to put that request in. I'm going to end my deferral, and I want to go ahead and get my diploma, because they already met their requirements. And the other thing is, any of the courses that they take after they've met the requirements can't undo their diploma. Okay. That was a big question, because you have to have a 2.0 grade point average to graduate. What if I take some classes after I deferred and I failed them all? It cannot undo the fact that you already met the requirements. Okay, so this is really a choice. For the most part, we expect, typically the students who stay completely till age 22 are kids with the most complex needs. We would love to have more students stay the entire time, but this actually is open to all students with disabilities, even students with more mild disabilities who are not in access courses. So it does, so we know of one student, I believe, who has, who's very, very bright, has those significant autism spectrum disorder related needs, and the team is recommending the deferral of the standard diploma for some dual enrollment. He's going to do dual enrollment at the local community college, but really needs the behavioral and social support to be successful.
So the school district will provide behavioral and social support to him where if he's taking dual enrollment classes?
It depends on where the courses are, but yeah.
They'll go to him and.
Well, it's an IEP team decision, but yes, because he's still under the 22, he's still under the school system IEP process. So yes, yes.
Does the K scholarship cover college tuition if up until 22?
No, I don't think, that's a good McKay question. I'm not sure if McKay covers college tuition. Write that one down. That's a good question. You stumped me. I know that, yeah, there's a personal learning scholarship account that we know you can use for college tuition. I don't think the McKay can.
State college?
I don't think so, but if you're dual enrolled, that is covered.
Or even the tuition in community college. Or even the tuition in community college, which is much less, but still.
Right, hold on, let me capture, because these are some good questions. Let me finish what you're saying.
So even the tuition in community college, which is much lower, there's still a tuition.
Yes.
So would it cover that?
Are you
If
talking
they're
about?
dual enrolled?
Yes, dual enrollment is at no cost to the student.
Okay.
Yeah. And yes, it requires the local school district to have articulation agreements with their local state, actually they're called state colleges, community, I don't think we call them community colleges anymore.
And how about the new programs, like Dan Marino started the new program, like for some of our students. How about that? Will K cover that?
It depends on the age level.
Yeah.
And you have to really check.
I'm saying under 22.
And you have to check with the individual program, because not all programs accept McKay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But from the other end, it shouldn't be a problem. From the McKay end, it shouldn't be a problem.
From a,
From the government end, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just whether this.
right,
program-
yes.
Okay.
The other thing is, I know that the Choice has a booth here, so you can.
Oh,
go by
yes.
and ask
That's
them.
good, yeah.
That's a great, so if you want more information on the new personalized learning scholarship, that is the choice booth. There's folks there who can answer that, McKay, because again, Florida is trying to increase options so that families have more choice and voice. And here's basically what I was saying about the deferral. You have to have an IP that describes the kinds of services that you're going to need. Like there has to be a purpose as to why you're deferring your receipt of your diploma. And some students will not agree to it. And again, if you're not your child's guardian, that's their a choice if they're 18 or above. Some kids are just, I'm out of here. So, here's the other thing we're excited about. How am I doing on time, Miss April? Okay. And you heard Elisa McKinley from Voc Rehab, and they're here as well. From the federal government, the Workforce Innovation Act is really increasing our partnership with Voc Rehab from the school system side to the Voc Rehab side to make those connections at age 14 as opposed to waiting till age 16 or the year that the student's going to graduate or the year that the student's going to age out, so that, like Lisa was saying, your child should know who they are working with for those transition planning before they leave school, long before that, and that's what's going to help us not to have those gaps where I graduate, woo-hoo, I had my graduation, I'm now 22, can't wait, and then next week, what do I do? And parents saying, okay, wait, what do I do? And so we want zero of that to happen anymore. And so we're really excited about that, and you will hear more and more. We are working on a cooperative agreement. Well, it's not exactly a cooperative agreement. We already have one, but really strong language, let's put it this way, that's going out to every superintendent, every school, every teacher to remind them, and it's coming from the Voc Rehab and us, to say, you have to make connections. That's the expectation, that it needs to be at age 14. Because both, we know, both Voc Rehab, if you've worked with them, have very large caseloads. In our education system, we know how much our teachers have on their plate. So I'm not suggesting that people are just ignoring this important work, but we're here to say we've got to find a way to prioritize it, because it can get on the back burner And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, okay, I'm 18. What's this voc rehab? Or as Elisa said, people come up to her and say, I've never even heard about voc rehab. I saw a question back there.
Yeah, I just, like you talked about the teacher stuff, and this is something you talked about earlier, the teachers with stuff on their plate.
That what?
What you talked about, the teachers with stuff on their plate. Like, we talked about having the ESC certification and the 20 points. So from where we are, I'm curious about if you have data, or if I could follow up with you about data of the amount of teachers who are now choosing to not renew their ESC certification. So like where we live, there was a massive drop.
It's any certification. They don't have a choice. If they don't do this, they don't continue to teach at all.
You mean ESC 7th grade, you teach 1st grade.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher.
So a teacher who would refuse to do that would not when they wouldn't be able to be a teacher anymore because they would not get recertified.
Not even like if there's a certification, what you're talking about, like they didn't have to have just an ESCP certification.
No,
Administrators.
Administrators too. We all are required. I'm required, even though I'm not in the classroom, because I keep my certificate up. Because Lord knows you never know what these jobs.
Because we just had a huge drop. After that came in place, we just noted for us, there was a huge drop of the amount of people who are not renewing their ESC certification. Like if they're dual certified, 3 certifications. So what's happening as parents is our choice, like let's just an example would be a child that's in an inclusive setting.
Yeah.
Our options of availability of teachers, if our IEPs are split in certain ways, are pretty much one option per grade level. The newest graduate, who basically, because all the state colleges now require you to graduate dual certified, but all the teachers that have been tenured and teaching for a long time are not renewing their ESC certifications.
Okay, so you're talking about a decline in teachers who can provide special ed. Do you know why? Are they saying why?
No, I thought it was connected to your time. And so I think it's great that they have to have the 20 extra points, but I'm just wondering, I just thought maybe that was the correlation.
No,
So
we do struggle, and this is something, we are struggling to keep teachers in special ed, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
There's a huge, and so that's the piece where it goes back to where I was going to go next, is it takes all of us working together. Because teachers are, first of all, honestly afraid to work in special ed, and not because of the kids, but they're afraid. They hear like, I'm going to get sued, the parents are always going to be mad at me, I don't know if I can do this all. I'm just saying, you guys know, you hear that, right? I mean, and so one of the things that we're really trying to do is, obviously parents on the other hand feel, the teacher's not listening, the teacher's not following the IEP. But at the end of the day, we need good teachers in special ed. And we have to find a way to support teachers so they can be successful, also feel that their time in special education serving in this capacity is highly valued. We have the same issue with our providers when our students exit our system. If you are an APD and you have a companion, as an example, high turnover rate, not very good pay, and not always feeling that they're being as valued in terms of the system. Yes?
It's really in that connection,
Yeah.
deployment, but I find that a lot of parents have no idea about the HCBS waiver. And I found parents whose children are 20, 18.
Which
20,
waiver?
The iBudget waiver.
Oh, okay.
The HCBS
Yeah.
waiver. And we've got 27 or 22,000 people on the waiting
Yeah.
list right now, and more money is going to be funneled in July into
Right.
the waiver. I'm lucky my son has the waiver,
Yeah.
but a lot of parents have no idea, and they're suffering and they're struggling. These are parents of children who are in crisis and should be accessing the waiver a lot younger, or at least being on the waiver so that
Right.
they can get those supported employment
Absolutely.
and supported living. And our school systems do nothing to educate parents about the waiver.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Now, a question I have is how many parents here whose children would be eligible under APD also spent time in early steps?
I don't know, but
Well, no, just here, I'm just curious. People here,
well,
Just raise a hand.
yeah, okay. Because to me, we should start with, because I think we could capture a large group of kids with developmental disabilities in early steps. And
I
then,
don't know when it is.
yeah, not waiting till kindergarten.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
get 7 years on the waiting list anyway.
Right.
Usually, but
But anyhow, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing, but would you agree that in addition to the school system, that early steps, making sure parents of kiddos with developmental disabilities, because I think the majority of our kiddos, very few just show up for school at 3 or 5. without,
Are they doing better?
Some don't even-
Because my child
some
went
get
through
less.
early steps and child finding because we initiated an evaluation. Neither of them picked up a red flag for autism.
okay,
And I can tell you, his first day of kindergarten, I will never,
really?
it was horrible.
Right.
And 5 years later, 6 years later, we're fine.
Okay.
So.
Well, I think we have to have kindergarten classes that are more prepared for a variety of students. Goes back to my first slide about. So let me stop right there because I think, let's do some questions. I think people have question cards. And is someone in this room after me? Or is it a break?
Lunch.
Oh, okay.
One, so.
So if people want to stay, I think I can answer individual questions.
Let me answer.
I need my glasses. Okay. April's gonna try to answer. Amy, you want to take some cards too?
Okay, this one is about Fiddler's, their Fiddler's office.
Okay. Stacy, did I answer your questions? Stacy?
Not really, because that's a concern that I have, because I know a lot of students who, I've looked at the access standards, and they're hard. And I have students that are not going to do this.
Are you a teacher?
No, actually, I work with them and I work on the facilities. So I work with lots of.
Okay, but remember the access points go down to the individual level. So that should not be the case. And no, we are not expecting that they will be getting a certificate of position.
Frankly, access hours.
That's not-
Sounds like an oxymoron.
But that's not new, and the kids have been passing it.
But it's new the way that it's being siphoned out there to both parents and to teachers. Because I'm from Broward, a very large city, and everybody is freaking out. And I'm worried that kids are going to end up with a certificate.
Well, they're not, and don't worry, because it's not new. I don't know why it's being, I'm not sure, again, I've been saying this because it's not the access, we've had access algebra now for about 4 or 5 years. So, why if people are,
Yes, like in my district, it's SBE. If you're an SBE, it's the catch-all. You're getting whatever you're getting in there, and a parent, those parents of the kids who.
let's talk.
There's a
required to be used till last year.
No, it's supposed
Because I
to.
was an ESC teacher in high school in a PE classroom, and I did not use those course codes.
Yeah, see.
Well, there was a phase out process.
Right, and so the school
It depends.
district used it to the last day they could use it, that's what I'm saying.
But many
There might be
districts,
others freaking out.
that's exactly right, because many districts move forward earlier
Right.
with access courses. So it could be that you're right, waited till the last phase out year. But anyhow, but we can talk more about how we can help in Broward.
So let me go ahead and answer this one. It says, my Fiddler's office and school district have publications and have trainings, but there aren't any due process trainings. Where can I learn the administrative law due process procedures? Perfect lead in. We have a new service that everyone who has a child with a disability, who's a parent of a child with a disability, has in Florida, and it's called LRP Special Ed Connection. And I have a list of your contact in your school district so that you can let them know, and this will give you information about legal issues. It will give you, it has a plethora of unbelievable information, and it's a website. So basically what happens, you contact them, you tell them you want it, and about a week later you will get an email from LRP giving you the access to it, and it is free. Thank you, State of Florida, Monica Verra-Tirado.
Taxpayers, it's not my money.
Right. So
I can just advocate for how
I
to
will
spend
leave
it.
this here. You can take one, or we can give them out. Pass them out.
Wait a minute. You can actually visit our booth and sign up.
Thanks for helping. Yeah.
In the exhibit hall, so if you have time, you're in the hall, come by and sign up.
So what I would suggest is because our time is up, I'm going to stay here, and those of you who did not get your questions answered, and we need to remember we need a back-to-back session. We never have enough time.